Going. We're back. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. I know Gianni was on his spiel. So Gianni, I don't know if you remembered where you left off, but if you could start over with what you said.
Okay.
No
problem. I'll be quick.
I think VR, what I do, I think VR starts off with the pick he was about to give out on the total Kansas City game. So
again, these lines have been up for a while. They've been bet into by a ton of sharp bettors. I mean, look, Kelly's already betting them months in advance looking for someone. So by the time that week rolls around, there's been thousands of Kellys betting into those NFL numbers and the sports books adjusting accordingly, and it's hard to find any value at that time. And again, I touched on the Raiders, how that line moved. We also bet under on Houston, Kansas City, under 56, under 55.5. Now that one's a primetime game. So there, I don't think there's any rush to, if you agree with us, to piggyback it, because Houston, KC, you're probably going to get a lot of over money from the public. And I think that's why you're not seeing the adjustment on that total, even though we bet it, that you're seeing on the Raiders side. It's a little bit different. So again, week one and the final week, you nailed it when you said how different they are and how difficult it is to find value. But with that said, it's definitely bettable because again, when that week rolls around, people are so excited for NFL. They're unloading that week. Most people bet their entire bankroll that first week. Lines are moving like crazy. So just be patient. That's the key. Sit back and wait for some of these to, bounce off a number and get some value. No reason to ever bet bad numbers. Like, protect your money. Look at it as your bullets. And if you use them all up, you're not going to have anything when there's actually a target there you can hit. So you got to hold on to those bullets for those targets that are close, not so far away, because you're never going to hit it.
Yes. And Gianni, are you specifically wearing a red and yellow shirt because you're subliminally telling us that maybe you're betting on KC?
Oh, no.
That is a Chiefs looking polo if I've ever seen one.
Well, you know me, I'm a Chiefs fan from way back. I saw that team breaking out years ago. I was well ahead of the market on the Chiefs.
VR, in all seriousness, I know on the Bet On It show, we both got a lot of shit. Why do you hate, for me, why do you bet against the Patriots? For you, why are you betting against the Chiefs? And we're going to talk about perceived value. I would love to know how you are addressing the Super Bowl champs going into this year. Is this a don't mess with them too much until you see how this team is? Maybe that we know that the market is going to overvalue them, or do you know the market's going to be overvalued and you can't wait to bet against this team?
Usually Super Bowl champs, they're not great bets the following year. You're usually going to pay more than you should, coupled with, do they have the hangover? Are they satisfied every time they go home? They see that trophy on their mantle. It's hard to get up at 5 a.m. to go jogging the next day when you've already achieved something. But being a young team, that fire should still be there. I haven't made a decision on the Chiefs. I haven't touched their season win totals. They haven't been one of those teams I've been diving into to regress because of the data. Like, real quickly, unlike a team like Green Bay or New Orleans, where, Green Bay was 7-1 in games that were decided, I believe, by like 7 points or less.
Yeah, less than a touchdown. One possession game.
Exactly. So most sharp bettors think along those same lines. Regression, progression. It's just a race and a decision of which teams are you expecting to regress or progress. And I'm not sure on the Chiefs just yet because of that young dynamic, unlike I do expect a regression from Green Bay. Even from the Saints, I expect a regression. From Baltimore, a regression, just based on the data. Because, again, their win, if you look at last year's wins and you compare it to that Pythagorean wins and losses, you'll find out some of these teams, based on points scored, points allowed, won 2 or 3 more games than they should have. I mean, Dallas was 8-8 last year, but 0-5 in games decided by 7 points. Yeah, so they should have been a 10-6 team. So that's how I approach it. I look for, I mean, we've talked about this a million times. It's nothing new, but that's pretty much what I'm looking for. Exactly what Kelly said. What's all the hype on? Because that's the last time that's when I don't want to be buying. Last year's Cleveland is not the team you want to be betting into.
Not yet, anyway. When we'll see. And I think there's some teams that maybe until they get some coaching changes, let's use the Texans, for example. Bill O'Brien has been the bane of my existence and may still be this year. And so this is a Houston team that I haven't quite made a decision on, and I plan on doing a ton more research. Shout out to Mark Lawrence. His playbook drops on Monday. I know everybody at WagerTalk and Sports Memo already got a copy, so thank you for that. So I was able, I always tell people they're kind of like a cheat sheet. He does so much work for you. So definitely check out Mark's playbook. That's where Gianni and I, or at least where I got some of these one possession stats, things like that. And so I've been reading a lot about Houston, for example, because I don't feel like I have enough knowledge on this team. What
do you think on them, Kelly? Because they had negative point differential, but they just conference 4-2 division. They were 5-3 at home, 5-3 away. They're tough to get a read on. Shouldn't they be?
They are, and I also think that their division is probably the toughest division for me to get a hang on this year. I do think the Titans may see some regression with Tannehill. We're going to find out. I love Mike Vrabel. I think that what they were able to do last year was great. And I think the note that everybody remembers with Tennessee is they got exposed by Kansas City. And I'm like, did you guys forget that Kansas City went into Tennessee and Tennessee pulled off a win? I mean, this team might have gotten exposed for lack of better words, but they also beat the Baltimore Ravens. There's a lot of things to consider about that team, and that is who I have winning the AFC South. My question is, I think Houston is a huge wild card. I think Indianapolis is a huge wild card. I am not a Phillip Rivers fan because Phillip is not clutch, and that is not something you can quantify mathematically. It's just so terrible. Every time I have a wager on him, I want to pull my hair out. So that is kind of why I have that team circled as a WTF, for lack of better words. I think the Raiders is another team that I need to dive into more. We don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be. Do I think it's going to be Marcus Mariota? Yes, but I don't know if he's going to be the starter week 1. So this is a Raiders team that I do think will be rejuvenated, new stadium, new everything. I do think that there is some sort of something to that psyche.
There is.
The old Oregon Ducks theory of, hey, look good, play good. I do think the Raiders will come out strong. I do like your +3 week 1 bet, even though it is on the road at Carolina. Carolina is another team. I know Minty loves this man, their new quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. I was excited when I saw from Teddy in New Orleans. Can Teddy replicate that in Carolina with Christian McCaffrey? I'm not sure. And there's so many different things when you have to look at new head coaches, new offensive coordinators. And, we're talking about Miami, we're talking about New England. There's so many things over the next 8 weeks that I need to learn about these NFL teams before I'm ready to make a serious week 1 wager. And going back to what we talked about before, when we first started the show, before we lost everybody, a big thing that you guys have to realize is that week 1, there's so many unknowns. We've seen guys get hurt in preseason. We've seen guys that were the week 1 starter not be the starter by week 4. There are a lot of things, and I think, as VR just said, I would use a smaller portion of my bankroll for NFL week 1 than I do NFL weeks 2 through 14. That's just point blank period. The end. I know I had a great NFL regular season. I had a terrible playoff, but the good news is that I didn't use a ton of bullets. I was focusing on bowl games. I had started my college basketball research, and I didn't want to give back everything that I had won because I just couldn't get a very good read on the playoffs. It's the same with week 1. Go in there, have a few bets. I know everybody's going to be so overexcited and overzealous to place all these bets because we've been in such a drought. But the good news is the other sports will be back before then, so maybe you guys can get out some of your degenerate tendencies prior to that.
Yes, absolutely. So you do admit that you're more cautious week 1 and you don't bet as much of your bankroll in week 1.
I just don't think you can. And I think the same thing goes with college football. Sure, there's some really nice bets to be had out there, especially in the marketplace with the overreactions and who's going to show up and things of that nature. But you really, really, really have to cherry pick the first couple of weeks of any sport. I think even with MLB, NHL, NBA, all of these other things coming back, these guys have a rust factor, and you've got to be cautious laying 13.5 points with the 1 seed versus the 8 seed. Like, just be cognizant of what you're doing and make really smart decisions early on, because you still want to have some of those bullets left for when you hit your stride in week 8. Those are things to really consider here. And I think the nice thing about a lot of people having a ton of downtime, myself included, and I was talking to Ralph Michaels about this the other day, was being able to spend more time researching this year. I have a ton more time. I'm not going to I'm going to leave the NBA up to Ski. I'm going to leave the WNBA up to Bobby. I'm going to leave the MLB up to Dave Koken, all of those guys. And if I want to make some bets based on what they're telling me, great. But the beauty of it is I don't have to focus on that at all. I can get ready for football season, and you have so much time now to really dig in deep and utilize that information that's at your fingertips.
Absolutely. Okay, I have a question here from our viewer, Spencer. He said, panel, would you handicap differently if there aren't fans to start the season? Would you tone down home field advantage? Gianni, what do you think? You have a smile on your face.
Great question, Spencer. Unfortunately, we don't have a history of a sample size with statistical significance to say, boom, I'm this confident. Mm-hmm. But because we don't have that is why you can probably take advantage. Here's what I mean, Spence. Now, you got to remember, we already know what quarterbacks are worth. I mean, your average NFL fan now, because it's out there all the time, if Brady goes down, if, Rodgers goes down, we know they're worth around a touchdown to the line. It's been talked about so much, and we have a history to know. And then the market reacts and decides whether they agree with the book or not and takes it from there. Here, I think you're going to see the same thing, because from what I've heard, at least the guys that I trust as far as data miners that not only know how to mine data, but actually know how to interpret it, most of them conclude that they don't believe the fans actually matter all that much. That home field advantage really isn't based on the fans. That's not what gives you those 2.5 points or so of advantage. At least that's what they believe. Now, I think the books are going to be forced to shade the lines towards that it is going to affect it. Because you got to remember, when it comes to NFL, recreational bettors far outweigh sharp bettors. So the odds makers need to keep that in mind. Even though they're basing their opening lines on power ratings, they're going to shade those opening lines against your biases. And if the perception going into the season is the home field advantage is not going to be there, then the line's going to be shaded towards home field advantage not being there. But because it's not been quantified yet, I say you approach it as if it's still there. And I think until you see otherwise, until you have actual data and proof to confirm that it's otherwise, I think you let the market draw conclusions and you take advantage of any conclusions they draw that seem nothing more than perception. Because I bring it up all the time on the show that we as humans see patterns that don't even exist. That's why when you walk through a casino, they put up next to the roulette wheel, what do they put up? The last 20 numbers that came up. Why? So you could uncover some kind of pattern that don't exist. The same thing with Baccarat. They show you whether player, banker, or tie. Why? So you could see some kind of pattern.
Hey, listen, I want you to know, and I know Johnny's on this, there is some definite stuff you can see there with Baccarat. You just got to follow the slashes and the circles.
I haven't.
I'm totally just BSing.
Better vision, better perception, better psychic skills than I have. But personally, I haven't been able to. And I think that's how we should approach it until we see that not having fans actually affects home field advantage, that a team doesn't play better at home than they do on the road. Because that's how you actually determine home field advantage. And real quickly, because we never talked about it, but if a team's 8-0 at home and they've outscored their opponents 100-0, and they're 8-0 on the road and they outscored their opponents 100-0, they have no home field advantage. Doesn't matter whether this team plays at home, plays on the road. There's no advantage to it. They're the same team. So the way we factor home field advantage is, do they allow less points and score more at home than what happens to this team on the road? And then we could come up with a home field advantage. And you look at a big couple years of sample size of that point differential and look at what it is over the last 5 years, what it is over the last 3 months maybe. But with that said, I think until we get definitive, Spence, don't fall for the nonsense. Take advantage of it.
I completely agree with you, VR. One of the things I just did for gaming today, we talked about actually quantifying it. And I know you said you can't quantify it, so I shouldn't try to be, but let's use Seattle, Kansas City, two of the loudest stadiums. If in theory there are 0 fans, I do still think we have to give a little nudge because of the familiarity of the field, well as as well as I don't think we're going to see no fans anyway. I just think we might see half fans. And who knows? I mean, right now casinos are reopening after they said they weren't reopening till August. Sportsbooks are opening on Friday. I mean, things are progressing a lot faster than they originally said. And so we may be talking about this all for nothing, but I do think you're right. Until we can figure out a way to quantify it, it's hard to guess. But I do believe that there will be an overreaction in the marketplace to maybe some of these home field advantages, New Orleans, Kansas City, Seattle, such as that, the Soldier Field, Green Bay, wherever it may be, that maybe we don't really see it actually come to fruition. I mean, these are places I've been to all of these stadiums. They're very loud, but is K-State, for example, in college, going to be worth anything? I give K-State a 6 when they play Oklahoma on an afternoon game because everybody's drunk. Everybody's there. It's the biggest game of the year, and it is rocking. That's why they were able to pull the upset last year, I truly believe. But if there's not a single fan in the college football stadium, I'm not giving K-State 0 for a home field advantage. Point blank, period, the end. How do you get up? How do you get excited? I think we've seen it, and you can maybe talk about it as far as the UFC. Some of these guys still get pretty hyped when this place is dark.
Yeah.
But some of them, I feel like you can tell. They're just like, man, it's just not the same.
No, I agree. There's going to be a change. It has to affect it some way. My approach is I'm not sure how. You know what I mean? Like it's got to. It has to affect it. I think we may see an overreaction after week 1. Like if the home teams don't do well in week 1, I think the overreaction is going to be, see, there's no home field advantage now without fans. I think we're going to be the market's going to rush to draw conclusions off of that week 1 or first 2 week results. And maybe we need to see more games before we could be sure to take advantage. But I agree with Kelly, like something like that. I even overlook that when it comes to Seattle, when it comes to New Orleans, it actually does matter because a lot of those false starts or audibles that can't be called may be happening because of these fans. Again, I don't know. And that's why you want to get ahead of the market, but you don't want to always be guessing. You know what I mean? You want to have some confidence in your hypothesis or in your bets when you're trying to get ahead of the market. You don't want it to be just a guess. You know what I mean? Like I'm drawing a conclusion, home field advantage is gone, and now I'm going to bet because of that. I think you need a little more like to be sure before you want to take advantage of those things.
Absolutely. And hello, Drew. Thanks for joining us. Drew Martin just joined us. That's my partner in NFL. Last year, I did a bunch of podcasts with him for Sports Memo for NFL. Do you guys have any more advice how to approach NFL week 1 before we kind of get to maybe Gianni's best bet for UFC?
I think we've touched on a lot of different things, Minty. I think we're okay with it. If anybody still has a question and they want to drop in the chat, please do. I didn't have a ton of notes. I just wanted to kind of regurgitate what I knew as far as that goes. And like I said, it would be great if I had some definitive bets, but I also am kind of not in the position to be telling somebody to tie up their money for June, July, August, September, 4 months, basically.
Wow, yeah.
If when I gave out my regular season win totals last year, there was a reason why I did. And because I felt so confident. I'm not telling people to tie up their money until September. I think it's 13th is the first game. So to me, hang back, take a break. If you do have some great information, like that, I don't know, Dak Prescott got hurt in practice and Cam Newton's going to be the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys and it hasn't made the news yet, then maybe you do want to bet Dallas week 1. But as of right now, I'm not seeing Dallas as this powerhouse team. So unless you get something that hasn't hit the newsstands or the bookmakers haven't been privy to, I don't think at this point in time, with the lines being a month old, you're going to find any value.
Right. Absolutely. Gianni, do you have anything to add on to that? Are we good for week 1?
No, I think we're good. I mean, we're very far out. As we approach it, we'll have more information. We'll have more certainty that we have a week 1 to look forward to on that date. So I think once we're sure and market will start moving, you'll start seeing more action because I'm starting to see some sharp money filtering into the market. But it seems like even the sharp bettors don't want to like overinvest in things unless they're sure, because again, their time is money just like everyone else is. And there's nothing worse than putting in a bunch of research, coming up with some bets that offer value that you think are plus EV, and then not being able to place them, or not being able to get down enough money, or it's canceled overall, then it's a waste of time. So again, I like what we touched on. I think we nailed some key points to help some bettors out. And as we get closer, we'll try to share some nuggets, but ask questions so we don't overlook anything, for sure. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody drop your questions in on the chat. We'll touch base on them. And Yanni, I know we were originally going to go over the UFC card, but we can't go through too much detail. Do you have any best bets that you've placed that you've liked so far? I know that the Vettori Roberson one is kind of a anticipated fight because it's rescheduled and Roberson pulled out because of medical reasons. And I don't know if you can talk about that, but I did want to ask you if you think that because he pulled out due to medical reasons when he was scheduled to fight last month, if that maybe affects how you're betting this fight.
I'm glad you brought that one up, Minty, and here's why. Because prior to that fight, I actually had bet Vettori in this matchup. And I don't know, I think I laid like minus 170, minus 180, what have you. I don't remember exactly.
That's higher now.
Yeah, and that's the big difference. That the perception has changed, meaning the fight appeared to be more competitive prior to that drama. At least that's what the market concluded, because we were, 24 hours away from the fight. People had already bet into it. You already saw line move. So we saw it move in Vettori's way a little bit, but not to this degree. Now you're being asked to pay a premium. And again, I tell you, like I said, I bet Vettori in this matchup last time. That bet was canceled, and I haven't rebet them here because they're asking for a much bigger price, and I'm not sure the edge was big enough, even at 180. I mean, you're getting an edge, but now that it's at 230, 220, 230, a lot of that edge is gone. I have to conclude it should be minus 300 now, and if that was the case back when it was 180, I would have unloaded a 5% play if I thought back then it should have been 300 or 400. So again, that's where I think the price they're asking now because of that drama doesn't make sense. The problem is I had already liked Vettori, so now to jump off him just because of that doesn't really make sense to me. But line value wise, I think it's on Roberson because of that.
Absolutely.
If you're going to bet for value, I think that's where I would look. And believe it or not, here's a great trend for you real quickly. You know how we know if you bet favorites or dogs in the NFL over the last 5,000 bets, you wouldn't have made money either way. If you bet overs or unders, you wouldn't have made money either way. They're close to 50-50. That's how good the point spread is in the NFL. That's how accurate it is, the closing number. In UFC, whether you bet the favorite or the dog, in every single fight from main event, co-main event, main card, all the way down, you're negative. It's negative. You can't blindly bet the favorite or the dog and make money even in any of the slots except the co-main event. For some reason, going back 20 plus years, if you did nothing else, Minty, and said, I'm just going to bet every underdog for $100, you will have made around 6% return on your money. So it's worth about, $6 on every 100 you're betting. That's over years. Now, where the dog in that co-main event for some reason, and again, that sounds like a trend that doesn't have a reason to continue. So it sounds like a nonsense trend. Like in baseball, if it's a left-handed pitcher and it's a sunny day and the third baseman's first name starts with an M, they're 16-0. Like, okay, that's great, but it makes no sense. That doesn't make any sense.
Bill Belichick, when it's raining on Tuesday, always.
He's wearing a blue sweatshirt instead of the red one. It's a lock. And for some reason, the co-main event, that's been the case. If you bet the underdog, it's the only slot that's been positive. So even there, Roberson appears to offer line value. So for me, it looks like a pass. But I do think the line value is on the dog, Roberson, even though if I had a gun to my head, I think Vettori beats him.
Right. Interesting. Okay. And go on to your best bet, maybe. Did you place one yet?
Not really unloaded best bet. I got a couple 3%. I got one 4% play, a couple 3%. No, here, you want to favor? You tell me, favorite or underdog? Favorite or underdog?
Come on.
All right, let me give you a dog. Here we go, baby. Mark De La Rosa. Usually I stay away from guys on short notice, but this kid's 25 years old, got a 5-year edge on our boy, Jourdain Espinosa. The line has gone back a little up. So the Espinosa money is going to continue coming in. I'm not surprised. Again, De La Rosa is coming in off 3 straight losses. It appears the pressure's there, but this is a much different matchup for him than what he has seen of late. And I do think he matches up well here. And more importantly, I think the price is way off. I think this is a coin flip fight. I think Espinosa at most should be a -120 favorite. He's going to have a little the reach advantage, which I don't like. But I do think the Bumblebee is going to get it done here. Again, there's no rush to bet him because you will see money coming in on the other side. And I don't trust MMA math as far as picking a winner. But I said it last time, you got to respect it in seeing what the market thought of fighters. And we do have a comparison here real quickly. Both of these guys fought Alex Perez, who we saw kick ass last week. That was my best bet. Now, both guys beat Perez. Here's the difference, and they fought him around the same time. Espinosa, Perez opened a -280 favorite against him. Perez won. Against, De La Rosa, Perez only opens a -185 favorite. So the market, the odds makers, had a lot more respect for De La Rosa. But based on those results of him coming in off 3 straight losses, now that has flip-flopped. And it seems like Espinosa is the value side. And that's just not the case, especially if you compare the prices based on what the market thought of both guys just a year and a half ago. So I like De La Rosa in this spot. Give me +1, even 130 is great, but you should get +145 close to, if you wait till Saturday, you may even get close to 150 unless it gets steamed by wise guys. But this is my play. I thought it had some value and I bet it.
Okay, beautiful. And then, anything on the main event that you can talk about? The Jessica Eye versus Cynthia Calvillo?
Yeah, here's what I expect. Now, here's the problem with MMA right now. Bet online opens up the first. They're trying to create the first market. So Bet Online's putting out the first numbers in MMA. The problem is they limit guys like me for $200, $100. So there's no way I'm going to bet into those lines because they're going to move. And I can't share the information because the line will be moved and no value will be there for anyone else to use that information. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, I didn't get enough down to even make the bet worth it. So I have to wait. But there's other sharp guys. There's a lot of guys that are able to win long term that may not be labeled sharp accounts, that only bet 100, 200 a fight. And for them, they're killing it getting into these lines. But it's changing the market for everyone because of that. And here's what I mean by that. Calvillo opened as high as like a -130 favorite. Immediately, I was like, I as a dog? That's the side. Because this is not even a coin flip. I should be favored in this spot. So that's the side. Unfortunately, I can't give her out as an underdog because I know none of my subscribers will get her as an underdog. I did, but they're not going to get her. So how's that fair to them? So instead, I have to wait until the rest of the markets open up. And they had her around -105, -110. And I said, pounce. Because I thought this line should get the 120, 130. It got the 120. Now it's coming back. Here's why. The recreational bettors are going to love Calvillo in this spot. Why? She's the young, up-and-coming fighter. You have one where you think their trajectory is going up and one where their trajectory of their career is towards the tail end. But that's just not the case. It's the case experience-wise where I has 22 professional fights and Calvillo only has 10. But age-wise, they're a year apart. And I think that is what is being overlooked here. I is not all that old. She just has a ton of experience. And I think Calvillo is going to have some trouble here. Again, she's a great grappler. If she could dominate the grappling game here, she should win an easy decision. But I don't think it's going to be that easy. And in the stand-up, I is going to create some problems. And I's also a very strong girl for that size. Calvillo's going up in weight. I think the value's on Jessica I here. I think you could sit back, get her as a dog even, because I do expect Calvillo money. But even if you bet her up to -120, I think that's the right side. Now, again, there's a lot of bettors that disagree with me. That's why this line's moving. There's a lot of bettors that disagree with me on De La Rosa also. That's why the line's moving the other way. But I can just tell you what I bet, and whether you follow or fade, I just hope you make money at the end of the day. For me, I trust long-term I'm going to be ahead, and hopefully you could be ahead. I can't promise I'm going to win this weekend, but that's where my money's on right now.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. Is that kind of all you have? I have more questions, but I don't know.
I have more questions. I have the most important question of the show. VR, how do I get to Fight Island? I was hoping it was in the Bahamas. Abu Dhabi?
I knew that was
Abu Dhabi.
I knew it was good. I thought it was going to be more in like the Pacific, like around Japan, Philippines, the east side of Africa, like around there, because it's for the international fighters. That's the problem. How do we get the international? So they have to make it close for Europeans, close for the Russians, close for the Asians. It's just the Brazilians that now have to go further. But that's the reason, because they have a whole roster that's international that hasn't been able to fight.
And then isn't able to come here because of visas and things like that. Okay.
Exactly. So that's going to solve that problem. The only issue it creates is you only have certain matchups you can make with international fighters or with U.S.-based fighters. So, they're balancing that pretty good so far. We've had decent fights, but that's the whole reasoning behind Fight Island, to get these international guys some action, and that's where it's going
to go on vacation.
I wish, Kelly. I wish. I was like, I'll go. I'll stay for free.
You don't have to pay me. Just let me go.
Just get me a room there. I'll pay my own air flight. I just want to be on Fight Island, where I could go to the beach during the day, go watch fights at night, drink, do the same thing over once a week. Life can't get any better.
Yeah, I mean, I'll fight someone if I can go on Fight Island. I'll bring you guys too. So I will. Amateur.
Minty Kelly grappling. This could be really fun.
Oh my God.
In all seriousness, I do think it'll be exciting, VR. What do you think about all of this? So if someone like me, I know a ton of the U.S. fighters, not personally. I mean, I know of things of that nature, and those are the people I followed, and I've gotten into UFC a lot more over the last couple of years thanks to your help. But what do you think the market's going to look like with a bunch of quote-unquote unknown names to many amateur UFC bettors?
That's a great question, because we kind of see that sometimes in the middle lower of the card, where you get some of these like Russian names, and most casual fans aren't sure who they even are. And what you usually get is record means everything, kind of like the rankings in college football, where your power ratings may have a team that's 6-4 in the top 10. But there ain't no way a 6-4 team is going to be power rated even in the top 25. That's just not going to happen. Ranked in the top 25. And that's what you tend to see with those, where the guy's coming in with a 15-1 record against a guy that's 6-2. So the 15-1 is the automatic bet. Regardless, a lot of times when you dig into that 15-1 record, they didn't face a fighter with a winning record till their 12th or 13th fight. So that's where I think you could find some value if you're willing to dig a little deeper and compare the level of opposition for these fighters who fought internationally. I think that's the key, to look there, because you got to put the record aside. We see it all the time. I mean, here it gets called out a lot, but elsewhere you could do it a little easier. Guys will rack up, they do it in boxing all the time. They're 30-0 before we even hear their names. But then you look in the list and who are the 30 fighters? That rarely ever happens in the UFC. You get tested every time, but most of these guys don't start off in the UFC. They start off in other promotions. And in those other promotions, the goals may be different. Let's get this guy to 10-0 and get him some bigger fights. And those opponents up until 10-0 may not have been all that good. So that is where I think you find value on these international cards. Those fighters that are being overlooked because of maybe don't have the experience the other fighter has, or even the comparable record, but their level of opposition has been day and night. And that's where I touch on with this De La Rosa fight. where sure he's lost 3 straight, but look who he's lost against. It's not like he lost to the bottom of the barrel.
Right.
So I think that's where we would look for that. I can't wait to fight Island, man. I can't wait.
It's going to be so awesome. When I saw it yesterday and then I saw the odds, I'm like, who made this ridiculous line? Everybody I talked to said Fight Island's a go. Why didn't I find a place to get down some action? It's kind of like Tiger wearing a red shirt for the match. I was like, this line's way off. You got to lay 4-1. It should be like 10-1. Are you you're kidding me?
Yeah,
it was time to go. Props to Dana White for everything that he's been able to put together during this whole pandemic and be able to keep us somewhat sane with sports.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Dana White. All right, guys, I think that kind of wraps it up. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. John, Joe, Spencer, Scott, Josh, M, Racha. I'm trying to name everybody. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Gianni and Kelly, for all the useful info for how to approach Week 1 NFL and some of your best bets for UFC. Gianni, we will see you guys again next week, Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe to WagerTalk TV on YouTube.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks for having us on.
Have a great day.